The cold November wind whipped through the streets of Chicago, carrying with it the promise of an early winter. Jack Hartley pulled his threadbare coat tighter around his lean frame, cursing silently as he realized he'd forgotten his gloves at home. Not that it mattered much. The thin fabric wouldn't have done much against the biting chill anyway. As he hurried down Michigan Avenue, his mind preoccupied with the disastrous job interview he'd just left, Jack barely registered the hunched figure huddled in a doorway. It wasn't an uncommon sight in the city, especially as the weather turned colder. But something about this particular person made him pause. She was an older woman, her face weathered and lined, but with eyes that seemed to hold a spark of something, intelligence perhaps, or defiance against her circumstances. A cardboard sign propped against her knees read simply, "Anything helps." God bless. Jack's hand instinctively went to his pocket, feeling for his wallet. He knew he shouldn't. He was down to his last few dollars himself, with rent due in a week and no job prospects in sight. But there was something about the woman's quiet dignity that tugged at his heart. With a sigh, he fished out his wallet and pulled out the lone dollar bill inside. It wasn't much, but it was quite literally all he had to give. "Here," he said softly, extending the crumpled bill towards the woman. "I wish I could do more, but—" The woman looked up, her eyes widening slightly as she took in Jack's appearance, the frayed cuffs of his shirt, the scuffed shoes that had seen better days. A flicker of something passed across her face. Recognition? Before she reached out to accept the offered money. "Thank you, young man," she said, her voice surprisingly clear and strong. "Your kindness won't be forgotten." Jack nodded awkwardly, unsure how to respond. He was about to turn away when the woman spoke again, her tone suddenly urgent. "Wait," she said, struggling to her feet. I need to tell you something." Jack hesitated, glancing at his watch. He was already late for his shift at the diner where he washed dishes part-time. But something in the woman's voice made him pause. "What is it?" he asked, curiosity overriding his initial urge to hurry away. The woman looked around furtively, as if checking for eavesdroppers. Then, to Jack's utter astonishment, she reached up and began to peel away what he now realized was an incredibly lifelike mask. As the latex fell away, Jack found himself staring into the face of one of the most recognizable women in America, Evelyn Blackwood, the reclusive tech billionaire whose innovations had revolutionized everything from smartphones to clean energy. I don't understand," Jack stammered, his mind reeling. "What's going on?" "Why are you—" Evelyn held up a hand, silencing him. "Not here," she said quietly. "It's not safe. Come with me, please. I promise I'll explain everything." Before Jack could protest, Evelyn had grabbed his arm and was pulling him down the street, moving with a speed and agility that belied her earlier frail appearance. They ducked into an alley, then another, until Jack was thoroughly disoriented. Finally, they emerged onto a quiet side street where a nondescript sedan was parked. Evelyn produced a key fob from somewhere within her ragged clothes and unlocked the car. "Get in," she said, her tone brooking no argument. Still in a daze, Jack complied. As Evelyn slid into the driver's seat and started the engine, he found his voice again. "Ms. Blackwood," he began, "I don't mean to be rude, but what the hell is going on? Why were you disguised as a homeless woman? And why are you kidnapping me?" Evelyn's lips twitched in what might have been amusement. "I'm not kidnapping you, Mr. Hartley. I'm saving your life." Jack's eyes widened. "How do you know my name? And what do you mean, saving my life? From what?" Evelyn sighed, her eyes fixed on the road as she navigated through the city traffic. "It's a long story, and we don't have much time. The short version is this. My company has developed a technology that could change the world, something that could eliminate poverty, disease, even aging itself. But there are people, powerful people, who don't want that to happen." Jack's head was spinning. This had to be some kind of elaborate prank, right? Or maybe he was hallucinating. Had someone slipped something into his coffee this morning? "I still don't understand." he said slowly. What does any of this have to do with me? Evelyn glanced at him, her expression unreadable. Because, Jack Hartley, you're the key to making it all work. Your DNA contains a unique genetic marker that we need to stabilize the process. Without you, everything we've worked for could fall apart. Jack laughed incredulously. My DNA? Come on, that's ridiculous. I'm nobody special, just a guy who can't even land a decent job. Evelyn's expression softened slightly. You're far more important than you realize, Jack, and that's why they're after you. As if on cue, the rear window of the car exploded in a shower of glass. Jack ducked instinctively, his heart pounding in his chest. Hold on, Evelyn shouted, slamming her foot on the accelerator. The car lurched forward, weaving through traffic at breakneck speed. Jack twisted in his seat, looking behind them. A black SUV was in hot pursuit, a man leaning out the passenger window with what looked alarmingly like a gun in his hand. Who are they? Jack yelled over the wind rushing through the broken window. The people who want to stop us, Evelyn replied grimly, taking a sharp turn that sent Jack slamming against the door. A shadow organization with ties to some of the most powerful corporations in the world. They'll do anything to maintain the status quo. Jack's mind was reeling. An hour ago, his biggest concern had been how he was going to make rent. Now he was in a high-speed chase with a billionaire, being shot at by shadowy organizations. It was like something out of a movie. Evelyn took another sharp turn, then another, her hands steady on the wheel despite the chaos around them. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity but was probably only a few minutes, she pulled into an underground parking garage, the entrance hidden behind a holographic projection of a brick wall. As the car came to a stop, Jack realized he was shaking. Evelyn turned to him, her expression a mix of concern and determination. I know this is a lot to take in, she said softly, and I'm sorry to have drawn you into this, but I promise you, Jack, what we're doing could change everything. We could end suffering on a global scale, but we need your help. Jack took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. I don't know what to say. This is insane. How do I know you're telling the truth? How do I know this isn't some elaborate scam? Evelyn reached into her pocket and pulled out a small device, no larger than a cell phone. She pressed a button and suddenly the air between them was filled with a holographic display. Charts, graphs, and complex molecular structures that Jack couldn't begin to understand. This is what we've been working on, Evelyn explained. A nanotech solution that can rewrite human DNA, eliminating genetic diseases, reversing aging, even enhancing human capabilities. But the key to making it stable and safe for widespread use lies in your genetic code. Jack stared at the display, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. It was beyond anything he'd ever imagined possible. But why me? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm nobody special. Evelyn smiled, a genuine warmth in her eyes. That's where you're wrong, Jack. You're 1 in 7 billion. A genetic anomaly that occurs so rarely that we've been searching for someone like you for years. She paused, her expression growing serious. I know I'm asking a lot, but the choice is yours. Will you help us change the world? Jack looked at Evelyn, then back at the holographic display. His mind was racing, weighing the insanity of the situation against the potential to do something truly meaningful with his life. Finally, he took a deep breath and nodded. Okay, he said, his voice stronger than he felt. I'm in. What do we do now? Evelyn's face broke into a relieved smile. Now, she said, pressing another button on the device, we introduce you to the team. The wall in front of them shimmered and disappeared, revealing a hidden elevator. As they stepped inside, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that he was leaving his old life behind forever. The elevator descended rapidly, the floors ticking by at an alarming rate. Jack's ears popped, and he realized they must be going deep underground. When the doors finally opened, he found himself staring into a vast high-tech laboratory that looked like something out of a science fiction movie. Scientists in white lab coats bustled about, their attention focused on complex machinery and holographic displays. In the center of it all stood a tall, imposing man with salt and pepper hair and piercing green eyes. "Jack," Evelyn said, gesturing towards the man, "I'd like you to meet Dr. Alexander Roth, the lead scientist on Project Renaissance." Dr. Roth extended his hand, his grip firm as he shook Jack's hand. "Mr. Hartley," he said, his voice carrying a slight German accent. "You have no idea how long we've been waiting to meet you." Jack nodded, still feeling overwhelmed. "I'm still not sure I understand everything that's happening," he admitted. Dr. Roth smiled, a hint of excitement in his eyes. "Then allow me to explain in more detail. Follow me, please." As they walked through the lab, Dr. Roth began to elaborate on what Evelyn had told Jack in the car. Project Renaissance is the culmination of decades of research in genetics, nanotechnology, and quantum computing. We've developed a way to rewrite human DNA at the most fundamental level, eliminating genetic diseases, reversing cellular damage, even enhancing human capabilities beyond what was previously thought possible. He paused in front of a large cylindrical chamber filled with a softly glowing blue liquid. "This is where the magic happens, so to speak. Our nanobots, programmed with the most advanced AI ever created, can rewrite a person's entire genetic code in a matter of hours." Jack stared at the chamber, a mix of awe and trepidation washing over him. "And you need my DNA to make this work?" Dr. Roth nodded. "Your genetic structure contains a unique sequence that acts as a stabilizing agent, for lack of a better term. Without it, the changes we make would be temporary at best, catastrophic at worst." "But why me?" Jack asked, voicing the question that had been nagging at him since this whole ordeal began. "How did I end up with this genetic anomaly?" Dr. Roth and Evelyn exchanged a glance, and Jack felt a chill run down his spine. There was something they weren't telling him. "Jack," Evelyn said softly, "there's something you need to know about your past, about your parents." Jack's heart began to race. He'd never known his biological parents. He'd been raised in foster care, bouncing from home to home until he aged out of the system. "What about them?" he asked, his mouth suddenly dry. Dr. Roth took a deep breath. "Your parents were scientists, Jack. They worked on the earliest versions of this project back in the 1990s. They used themselves as test subjects." Jack felt as if the floor had dropped out from under him. "What are you saying?" "You're the result of their experiments, Jack," Evelyn said gently. "The first human being born with enhanced DNA. Your parents sacrificed everything to bring you into this world, to give humanity a chance at a better future." Jack stumbled backward, his mouth reeling. "No," he whispered. That can't be true. I'm nobody. I'm just Jack." Dr. Roth stepped forward, placing a steadying hand on Jack's shoulder. "You're far more than just Jack, Mr. Hartley. You're the key to unlocking humanity's full potential, the gift your parents gave the world." As Jack struggled to process this earth-shattering revelation, an alarm suddenly blared through the lab. Red lights began flashing, and the scientists around them burst into frantic activity. "They've found us," Evelyn said, her voice tense. "We need to move. Now." Before Jack could respond, the far wall of the lab exploded inward in a shower of concrete and steel. Through the dust and debris stepped a figure that made Jack's blood run cold. A man in a sleek black exosuit, his face hidden behind a featureless helmet. "Hand over the boy," a mechanically altered voice demanded, "and we'll let the rest of you live." Dr. Roth stepped in front of Jack, his face set in grim determination. "Never," he growled. "We'll die before we let you get your hands on him." The figure in the exosuit tilted its head, almost as if amused. So be it. What happened next was a blur of chaos and violence. The exosuited figure moved with inhuman speed, tossing aside scientists and security personnel as if they were rag dolls. Evelyn grabbed Jack's arm, pulling him towards a hidden door at the back of the lab. "We need to get you to the stabilization chamber," she shouted over the din of battle. "It's our only chance." As they ran, Jack could hear the sounds of destruction behind them. He wanted to look back, to help somehow, but Evelyn's grip was like iron as she pulled him along. They burst into a smaller, more secluded lab. In the center stood another cylindrical chamber, similar to the one he'd seen earlier but smaller, clearly designed for a single person. "Get in," Evelyn commanded, already typing furiously at a nearby console. "This will activate your latent abilities. It's the only way you'll be able to defend yourself." Jack hesitated, his mind spinning with questions and doubts. I can't." Evelyn turned to him, her eyes blazing with intensity. "Jack, listen to me. You are more than you know, more than you've ever dreamed. But you need to trust me. Trust in what your parents believed in. The future of humanity depends on it." The door behind them buckled, the sound of metal screaming under immense pressure filling the air. They were out of time. With a deep breath, Jack stepped into the chamber. As the door sealed shut and the blue liquid began to fill the space around him, he locked eyes with Evelyn one last time. "Good luck," she mouthed, just as the exosuited figure burst into the room. The liquid engulfed Jack, and for a moment, all was silent and still. Then pain unlike anything he'd ever experienced ripped through his body. It felt as if every cell, every atom of his being was being torn apart and reassembled. Through the blue haze of the liquid, Jack could see Evelyn fighting the intruder, her movements surprisingly skilled for a tech billionaire. But she was clearly outmatched by the advanced technology of the exosuit. As Jack watched in horror, the intruder landed a devastating blow, sending Evelyn crashing into a bank of computers. She lay still, blood trickling from a gash on her forehead. Something snapped inside Jack. A surge of energy unlike anything he'd ever felt before coursed through him. The pain receded, replaced by a sense of power and clarity that was almost overwhelming. With a thought, the chamber around him shattered, the blue liquid evaporating instantly. He stepped out, facing the exosuited figure with newfound confidence. "That's enough," Jack said, his voice resonating with an authority he'd never possessed before. "This ends now." The intruder paused, clearly taken aback by this sudden turn of events. What are you?" Jack smiled, a glowing energy beginning to crackle around his hands. "I'm the future," he said simply. "And you're on the wrong side of history." What followed was a battle unlike anything the world had ever seen. Jack moved with impossible speed and agility, his every gesture unleashing bursts of energy that sent the exosuited attacker reeling. The advanced technology of the suit was no match for Jack's newly awakened abilities. In a matter of minutes, it was over. The intruder lay defeated, the exosuit sparking and smoking. Jack stood over him, his chest heaving not from exertion, but from the sheer rush of power flowing through him. Evelyn stirred, pushing herself up with a groan. Her eyes widened as she took in the scene before her. "Jack," she whispered. "You did it. You fully awakened." Jack turned to her, extending a hand to help her up. As their fingers touched, a spark of energy passed between them, and Evelyn gasped. "I can feel it," she said in awe. "The potential, it's incredible." Jack nodded, a newfound sense of purpose filling him. "I understand now," he said softly. "What my parents were trying to achieve, what you've been working towards all this time. This power, it's not just for me, it's for everyone." As if on cue, Dr. Roth burst into the room, followed by a team of security personnel. He stopped short at the sight before him, the defeated intruder, the destroyed lab, and Jack standing there, practically glowing with energy. "It worked, Doctor," Roth breathed, his eyes wide with wonder. "You've unlocked the full potential of your enhanced DNA." Jack turned to the scientist, his expression serious. "Dr. Roth, how quickly can we replicate this process? How soon can we start helping people?" Dr. Roth blinked, clearly caught off guard by the question. "Well, with your genetic material as a stabilizing factor, we could potentially begin human trials within months. But Jack, you have to understand the implications. This technology, it will change everything, the very fabric of society. Jack nodded, his mind racing with possibilities. I know, and that's exactly why we need to do this right. No more secrets, no more hiding in underground labs. The world needs to know what's coming. Evelyn stepped forward, her expression a mix of pride and concern. Jack, are you sure? Once we go public with this, there's no going back. The forces aligned against us, governments, corporations, anyone with a vested interest in maintaining the status quo, they'll stop at nothing to shut us down. Jack looked at her, a small smile playing at his lips. Let them try, he said, a hint of challenge in his voice. We have something they don't. Hope. Real, tangible hope for a better future. And I think you'll find that's a far more powerful motivator than fear or greed. Over the next few weeks, Jack worked tirelessly with Dr. Roth and his team to refine the process that had awakened his abilities. They made breakthrough after breakthrough, each day bringing them closer to a version of the treatment that could be safely administered to the general public. Evelyn, meanwhile, used her considerable influence and resources to prepare for their grand unveiling. She arranged interviews, prepared press releases, and worked to secure allies in key positions of power around the world. Finally, the day arrived. Jack stood backstage at a hastily arranged press conference, his heart pounding with a mix of excitement and trepidation. Evelyn approached, giving his arm a reassuring squeeze. "Are you ready for this?" she asked softly. Jack took a deep breath, nodding. "As ready as I'll ever be. It's time the world knew the truth." As he stepped out onto the stage, the flash of cameras nearly blinded him. The room was packed with journalists from every major news outlet in the world, all clamoring for a glimpse of the man Evelyn Blackwood had promised would change the course of human history. Jack approached the podium, feeling the weight of countless eyes upon him. He cleared his throat and began to speak. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice steady despite his nerves, "my name is Jack Hartley. A month ago, I was nobody. Just another struggling young man trying to make ends meet in a world that often seemed indifferent to my existence. Today, I stand before you as living proof that the future we've all dreamed of is within our grasp." He went on to explain, in terms carefully crafted to be understood by the general public, the nature of Project Renaissance. He spoke of the potential to eliminate disease, to extend human lifespans, to enhance physical and mental capabilities beyond what was currently thought possible. "But this gift comes with great responsibility," Jack continued, his voice growing more impassioned. "We stand at a crossroads in human history. The technology I'm about to demonstrate to you has the power to eliminate suffering on a global scale, to level the playing field in ways we've only dreamed of. But it also has the potential to create greater divides than ever before if it's not implemented carefully and ethically." He paused, looking out over the sea of astonished faces. "That's why I'm here today. Not just to announce this breakthrough, but to invite all of you, all of humanity, to be part of the conversation about how we move forward. This isn't a power to be hoarded by the elite or exploited for profit. It's a gift, meant for all of us." With that, Jack stepped back from the podium. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and then he began to glow. A soft, blue light emanated from his skin, growing brighter by the second. When he opened his eyes, they were shining with an otherworldly light. The room erupted in gasps and exclamations. Cameras flashed frantically as Jack demonstrated abilities that seemed to defy the laws of physics, levitating several feet off the ground, generating force fields, even seeming to teleport from one side of the stage to the other in the blink of an eye. When he finally returned to the podium, the room was in a state of stunned silence. "What you've just seen," Jack said, his voice ringing with authority, "is only the beginning. With proper development and ethical implementation, these abilities, and many more, could be available to everyone. Imagine a world where physical disabilities are a thing of the past, where mental illness can be cured as easily as a common cold, where the limitations of the human body are no longer a barrier to achieving our full potential. He paused, letting his words sink in. But I want to be clear. This is not about creating superhumans or leaving anyone behind. It's about lifting all of humanity to new heights, about solving the greatest challenges our species has ever faced: climate change, resource scarcity, the threat of global pandemics. All of these become surmountable when we unlock the full potential of the human mind and body. The press conference stretched on for hours, with Jack patiently answering question after question. By the time it was over, it was clear that the world would never be the same. The news spread like wildfire, dominating headlines and social media feeds across the globe. In the days and weeks that followed, Jack found himself at the center of a whirlwind of activity. There were more interviews, meetings with world leaders, heated debates about the ethical implications of the technology. Through it all, he remained steadfast in his commitment to ensuring that Project Renaissance would benefit all of humanity, not just a privileged few. It wasn't an easy road. There were protests from religious groups who saw the technology as an affront to their beliefs, terrorist attacks by extremists who feared change, legal challenges from pharmaceutical companies who stood to lose billions if disease became a thing of the past. But for every obstacle, there seemed to be 10 times as many people eager to embrace the promise of a better future. Volunteers lined up by the thousands to participate in the first rounds of human trials. Governments around the world began to restructure their healthcare systems in anticipation of the coming changes. 1 year to the day after that fateful encounter on a cold Chicago street, Jack stood on the balcony of his new office in the gleaming headquarters of the Renaissance Foundation. Beside him stood Evelyn, her face glowing with pride as they looked out over the city. "Did you ever imagine it would turn out like this?" Jack asked, gesturing to the bustling streets below, where people with glowing eyes and subtle enhancements went about their daily lives. Evelyn shook her head, a small smile playing at her lips. "Honestly, when I set out on this path, I hoped to change the world. But this is beyond anything I could have dreamed." Jack nodded, his expression thoughtful. "We've come so far, but there's still so much to do. So many people who need help, so many problems still to solve." Evelyn placed a hand on his shoulder, giving it a gentle squeeze. "And we'll face them together, one day at a time." As the sun set over the city, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink, Jack felt a sense of peace wash over him. He thought back to that cold day when he'd given his last dollar to a stranger in need, never imagining how that simple act of kindness would change not just his life, but the course of human history. In that moment, he silently thanked his parents for the gift they'd given him. Not just the enhanced DNA, but the capacity for compassion that had led him to this point. And he renewed his vow to use his abilities, his influence, and every resource at his disposal to create a world where no one would ever have to sleep on the streets again. As night fell, and the city began to glow with a mix of natural and technologically enhanced light, Jack turned to Evelyn with a smile. "Ready to change the world again tomorrow?" he asked. Evelyn laughed, linking her arm through his as they turned to go back inside. "Always," she replied, "always." And so, the next chapter in humanity's great adventure began. A future bright with possibility, built on the foundation of a single act of kindness between strangers on a cold city street.